101.5 FM, and it's time for Doctor's Note. So this morning, I have Dr. Solomon Ayensu on the line. He's a pharmacist and managing director at Draxer Therapeutics, and he's here to help us break down what exactly stress is. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Natalia.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Nice to hear from you today.
Yes, good to hear from you too. So, Doc, tell us, when usually a lot of people are conflicted when they hear stress, they are not quite sure what it is. Can you give us a breakdown of what exactly stress is?
Okay. Yes, so once again, good morning to you and to all your listeners. When we talk about stress, stress is actually a very normal human response. We were made in such a way that if there is a change in circumstance, if there is a new demand, a new challenge, our body should be able to react to it. So our bodies release some chemicals so that in stressful situations, we will be prepared to be able to handle it. So actually, stress in itself is beneficial for us. It's actually a normal human response that we actually are supposed to be stressed so that we can handle stressful situations that come up in our life.
Okay, so what this means is that stress is healthy?
Yes, that's it. The problem, though, is that it's not always healthy,
Okay.
As you mentioned, it is part of the normal human life. However, there are certain situations that make us overly stressed.
Okay.
As the saying goes, too much of everything is bad. So even though the normal stress is such that our bodies will be able to respond to certain situations, there are certain times, though, that stress can be prolonged. If stress is, prolonged for a very long period of time, it could be caused by money problems. You know how Ghana is hot these days. People finding difficulty to even secure a job. Even some health conditions can cause prolonged stress.
Okay.
Or even work schedule and all of that. So when stress persists for a very long period of time, then that is a problem because it could cause some diseases, along the way.
Okay. And when stress becomes unhealthy, does it come with any symptoms that, anybody should be aware of?
Well, yes. If you are stressed, you would know it. Because there are some symptoms that usually come along with it.
Okay.
Perhaps I'll talk about some of the physical symptoms.
Okay.
Usually you begin to get some headaches, some unexplained headaches. You don't know where it's coming from. You can do all sorts of tests, malaria, typhoid, and all of that, and nothing is coming out positive. Sometimes it's just a sign that you are being stressed. It could also be that you are constantly tired. Even after you have slept for a whole night, 8 hours, 10 hours of sleep, you wake up and you are still tired. It could be a pointer that you are probably, stressed. Like you mentioned, stress sometimes also comes with sleep disturbances, anxiety. You are constantly worried, constantly nervous. It's like you are always on the edge. Stress does that to you sometimes, and it's a very uncomfortable feeling. And there are certain times that we even have people with very short temper. They think that they have bad attitude. Sometimes it's just stress. They are going through a lot, and it comes out in their speech and in their speech.
Right. That's very interesting to note. Now, when a person is going through, these times, is there a certain effect that this stress can have on their bodies or on them health-wise?
Yes. So, stress, like you mentioned, if it's prolonged, if it stays on and on and on, these chemicals that our bodies are producing in response to stress, we don't need them in very high amounts. So when we are constantly exposed to them, people develop heart disease because of chronic stress.
Right.
They are more prone to getting like heart attacks and some cardiovascular problems and all of that. People develop high blood pressure just because they have not been able to manage stressful situations in their life. And in fact, stress actually weakens our immune system.
Okay.
So if you realize that you get sick very often, every cold that is passing by, you touch it. Every, small infection that is passing around, you also get infected. It's a sign that probably our immune system is a bit weakened, and stress can be a contributing factor to that issue. Even for women, stress can even cause some hormonal imbalances, lead to fertility issues, and many things like that. So stress is usually not a preferred thing to have long term. Short term, yes, but in the long term, we need to find strategies to be able to deal it.
Okay, I like that you mentioned short term and long term. Now, obviously, with what you've mentioned, if somebody is going through stress, they would know with some of the headaches and the anxiety that will come with it. But how do they make sure that it's a short term and not long term? Can it be controlled? What is it that you can do to control it? I mean, once you know that, okay, this is where I am at the moment, what is it that I can do to make sure it is not prolonged?
Right. So usually mental health experts give a few guidelines on how we can all manage or reduce the incidence of prolonged stress. Normally we hear that regular exercise helps us stay healthy. And it is true. In the case of stress too, that is the case. If we are physically active, we engage in a lot of physical activities like walking, jogging, or even swimming, or any physical activity that we can find ourselves engaging in.
Right.
It helps our bodies reduce counter chemicals, chemicals that are known as endorphins. And these endorphins, they lift our mood, they make us happier.
Right.
So physical exercise is one, very affordable way, if I can say, that we can use to prevent the incidence of stress. Another thing we can talk about is also ensuring that we eat a balanced diet. All the things that nutritionists tell us, eating vegetables, lean proteins, fruits, and all of that, we need to do them. If we're able to balance our diet properly, then we are sure that we can also avoid, stressful situations. But, I must also say that sometimes we also bring the stress upon ourselves. Sometimes we load ourselves with so much, and at any point in time, we have a lot to do. If we can set realistic goals for ourselves, reduce the amount of pressure that we are bringing upon ourselves, avoid over-committing ourselves to various tasks. When we're able to do that, we're able to also limit stressful situations in our lives as well.
Right.
And as I've mentioned, stress can also cause, some health disease as well. So it's important that we also practice regular checkups. Go to the hospital every now and then to, check our blood pressure, how our heart is functioning, our kidney function, and all of that. It will help us to be able to prevent some of these long-term effects that stress can have on our body.
Okay. All right. So I've heard you mention exercise and also, trying to manage your expectations and toning down on the many responsibilities that you put upon yourself. But are there drugs that can also help you manage stress?
That's a very interesting question. We don't have drugs specifically to treat the stress itself. Because, like you mentioned, the stress is our body's natural response to situations, so we need it. So if we begin to look for drugs that can deal with the stress itself, we don't want that because we'll actually be harming our body. However, there are several medications and perhaps even supplements that can help to alleviate the symptoms that are associated with stress. We talked about anxiety as being one of the symptoms. We talked about sleep disturbances. So those ones, if you are constantly stressed, your doctor can prescribe some medications that can help you to deal with some of these situations. There are also medicines that you can get over the counter, like some supplements and vitamins, that some research is showing that they can be able to help with sleep, anxiety, and all of that. So for the stress itself, there isn't medication for stress. However, the associated symptoms, some medications can help us be able to manage them.
Okay. All right. So I'm guessing that, with everything that you have mentioned, everybody would have to pay particular attention to themselves when they begin to stress and know the things that they have to do to make it better so that it's not prolonged. But I
Yeah.
guess with what you said, the stress in general is not a bad thing. It is
No,
when
no.
it is prolonged that it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in general, healthy practices for everybody. What are some of the things that we should practice? I know you mentioned exercise for when a person is stressed, but healthy practices in general for everybody so that, as much as you may get there every now and again, if you're doing this on a daily basis, I'm guessing it would tone down on the amount of stress that comes to you from time to time. So, can you take us through some healthy practices that will be easy for almost everybody to do?
Yes. So, yeah, you mentioned that when we are already stressed, yes, it's good that we do some form of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also important to note that exercising actually helps us even prevent the stress in the first place. So if we are able to, in our own small way, not aiming, difficult or serious exercise, just
Mm.
walking around, being engaged in other activities and all of that,
Right.
it can help us. So some physical activities, just make sure that we are not, sedentary. We are not living a sedentary
Mm.
lifestyle. We
Yeah.
move from home to the office. There's no physical activity whatsoever. There should be some physical activity, at least for everyone. It can help us be able to for our body to better respond to some of these things. And like you
Right.
mentioned, we need to sleep well.
Mm.
Sometimes the pressures of life and all of that, it makes us want to combine multiple tasks and jobs and all of that.
Mm.
If we can at least get the 7 to 8 hours of sleep that is usually recommended, it will help. So that we can be able to, manage some of these things. And then we also
Okay.
have to eat well. So these points that we mentioned for those who are dealing with stress itself, it also applies for those of us who are also trying to prevent.
Mm.
We need to practice these healthy things. And I'm
Okay.
sure that everyone can do these things at least. It can be somewhat of a part in our life.
Mm. Okay. Finally, there's also a thing that I've heard a couple of people complain about where it feels like I'm tired all the time. I woke up, there's nothing really going on, but you're tired all the time. The least thing that you do that exerts a little energy gets you tired and you're almost panting for breath and you're, trying to balance it out. Would you say that is also a symptom of stress?
Yes. So stress can cause someone to feel tired all the time.
Mm.
However, it's important to note that it is not the only reason why someone can experience that.
Okay.
People can feel tired all the time as a result of other medical conditions.
Right.
For example, if you have you have low blood levels, you could feel tired all the time because all parts of your body, including your brain, needs adequate supply of blood to
Mm.
be able to feel active and all of that. So if you have low blood levels, you are likely to feel tired all the time as well.
Okay.
It could also be attributed to other vitamin and mineral deficiencies.
Mm.
Sometimes minerals like magnesium deficiency
Mm.
or even, some calcium deficiency and all of that. It can lead people to feel that they are tired all the time. So it is multifactorial. But of course, yes,
Right.
stress is part of the reason why
Okay.
people sometimes feel that way.
Okay. All right, Doc. Thank you so much for this education. And I mean, it's always good that we know because when we know better, we do better. And so we won't take it for granted the knowledge you have shared with us this morning. We'll be sure to exercise more and practice, um, you know, a good lifestyle so that we prolong our lifespans. We really appreciate you joining us on the show this morning.
Yes, that's fine. I also appreciate it very much that we have spoken again.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. So you had Dr. Solomon Ayensu. He's a pharmacist and managing director, Draxer Therapeutics, and he spoke about stress. So I'm guessing that, if you're in that category that, you're trying to take everything on And it's a thing that a lot of us like to do. You're taking on everything. It's like, okay, superwoman, here I come. I will handle this and that and that and that and that. And sometimes you need to just take a breather. Okay, you will solve a lot of problems, but you really cannot do everything. So sometimes you need to take a break and breathe so that you don't take more than you can handle, which will, of course, stress you out and maybe prolong that stress, which is unhealthy for you. My name is Natalia. This is The Zone on Starr 103.5 FM.